Hello everyone, and welcome to this little unwrapping, I guess a little look at 0 Hour Crisis in Time. This is the new hardcover edition of the famous 0 Hour story that was originally, that came out back in the mid-90s. This was kind of like, I guess, the 10-year anniversary, at least then, was the 10-year anniversary of Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it seems like every 10 years or so, DC Comics kind of has this universe-shattering, multiverse-spanning, cosmic, threat that seems to require everyone in a DCU to band together to defeat the threat, which ultimately, at its conclusion, does something which either changes the timeline or changes the histories of characters, events, places, people, that sort of thing, and ultimately kind of makes the publisher restart books and whatnot. 0 Hour is probably most famous because of the villain, who ultimately turned out to be, spoiler alert, Hal Jordan, former Green Lantern at this time. But before I get into actually opening this, I just want to give you kind of like a quick background. For those of you who are familiar with the death of Superman, and as you can see, he's here on the cover because he plays a very important role even in this story. There was the death of Superman, then there was the return of Superman, and also known as the reign of the Superman. And in one of the issues, I believe the issue where it actually happened would have been, I believe it's Superman number 80. This was way back in the day. Basically what happened was the cyborg Superman pretty much invaded Coast City, or it turned out that he was in league with the Mongol character. And here it is in the trade paperback form here. I also have them in single issue, but just for the sake of giving you a brief look, I'll show you here. In this particular issue, Superman number 80, the cyborg Superman, with the help of Mongol and Warworld, or Warworlders, actually come together and destroy Coast City, which Green Lantern fans out there will know is the home of Hal Jordan, and of course also known as Green Lantern. And of course, this story played out and ultimately eventually led to the return of Superman himself a few issues later, and even Hal Jordan himself kind of had a role in the story much later on. And even though the books themselves didn't quite show what exactly happened, or didn't quite show the immediate aftermath, in the months that followed, there were a series of events that transpired, which ultimately led to Hal Jordan kind of going nuts, turning on the Guardians of the Universe, and ultimately becoming Parallax, which is who he is here. And so that story kind of leads into this, which is basically was Emerald Twilight, when Hal Jordan kind of turns his back on the Guardians and the Corps, murders them, destroys the central power battery on Oa, and absorbs all of the Green Lantern's power into himself, and basically becomes a villain known as Parallax, who has the power to do anything. And that ultimately led to a new dawn at the time, and Green Lantern fans will also know that it also turned out to be the first appearance or the introduction of the now popular Green Lantern, Kyle Rayner. So just so you know, all of these events kind of led directly into 0 Hour. And of course, this book has been issued before, of course, single issues. And if I recall correctly, it started at 4 and then worked its way backwards. So by the time we got to issue number 0, hence the name, everything had happened. And as you can see, here's the previous trade paperback that came out several years ago. You can see, in comparison, I guess, the content might be similar in terms of page thickness. but you can just tell already that the hardcover is superior. So yeah, moving right along. As you can see, it's a gorgeous cover there by, of course, Jerry Ordway and Dan Jurgens, both of whom were writers and artists on the Superman books at the time, especially Dan Jurgens. Jerry Ordway, meanwhile, had recently retired from the Superman books as of Adventures of Superman number 500, which came out maybe months earlier. So, without any further ado, let me open this thing up and we can look and see what's inside. But on the back, you notice this nice image there, which I believe is kind of like a similar take on the original front cover of the original trade. So you can kind of see similar poses there. And instead of Hal Jordan being here, you have, I believe the name was Monarch, was the name of the character, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look at that again. But anyway, so yeah, on the back, it basically just gives you a recap. You got a dust jacket. Basically gives you like a synopsis and all of that stuff. So yeah, let's open this thing up. Gotta be careful not to mess up any pages here. I'm actually really happy this came out. It's one of those things where it seems like ever since DC Rebirth has started and since the New 52 went by way of the dumpster, DC has kind of recognized its heritage and its good age of storytelling and books, and they seem to be reprinting almost a ton of stuff that came out in the 80s and the 90s and even eras before, all in trade, paperback, and hardcover form with newly print, with new colors and everything just looks awesome. And some of the stuff has been out of print for years. This is no exception. So anyway, you open it up and you can see the dust jacket, nice gloss look to it. The spine says 0 Hour with the symbol and Crisis in Time, Jurgens and Ordway as the writer and artist. And along with the gorgeous image on the cover, you open it up, rather thick, and you see there's one of the versions of the villains himself there. And let's see if there's anything here. And just like some of the issues, it's just a plain white cover, this glossy symbol of 0 Hour, which is awesome. Again, the spine says 0 Hour, Crisis in Time, and on the back it doesn't have anything. So that's kind of cool. It's in keeping of the spirit of the book, I'd say. And if you just kind of flip through it, it looks awesome. And it seems to start, if I recall correctly, the book kind of starts off at issue number 4, and then works its way back. And interestingly enough, it was an awesome story at the time, but it changed some things up. Things like the Legion of Superheroes had some alteration to JSA, Justice Society of America. Some of them were made younger, some of them were made older, that sort of thing. And this attempted to fix a few things and retcon a few other things at the same time. But as far as the content of this book versus the trade, it looks like the trade itself from back in the day starts off with this issue, which I believe was like the showcase issue of 0 Hour, and then it ultimately leads into the main story. And this also starts off the same way, even though you'll notice that it has a forward here, which is kind of cool. I like it when they put forwards in there, because it's just a good way to kind of bring people up to speed. And it looks like this particular forward was by Dan Jurgens himself, so I look forward to actually reading that. But as you go through, you'll see the showcase story, then it leads directly into the countdown to 0 Hour, which is actually issue number 4. And then it goes all the way through, and it involves characters major and minor, and you can just see them. And the art looks fantastic. Major improvement over this, of course, the paper quality is much different, which I am very pleased with. And yeah, it goes through the main story, counting down. This would be issue number, when was this? This was number 2. And then finally it gets to 1, and then finally issue 0 was supposed to be the climax of the whole thing. And here's one of the infamous scenes that have been repeated in various other books throughout the years. I believe this scene was also in one of the scenes in Convergence, etc. So here is Hal Jordan himself, villain, Parallax as he became, and ultimately this is where his story picked up, and then he became he was a villain here, and then he redeemed himself later on in another kind of like crossover called The Final Night, where he sacrificed himself to reignite Earth's sun after the sun was kind of taken out by an alien sun-eating entity, and then by him saving the Earth, his soul or his spirit or whatever was saved by the Spectre, and he merged with the Spectre, and where he remained for several more years until Jeff Johns' Green Lantern Rebirth storyline. So as you can see, it just kind of goes on, and the white pages are actually intentional because that's how it was in the story. It's supposed to symbolize the erasing of time, or the wiping of time, so to speak. And I thought it was a brilliant idea. You can see the 0 there, and it's just nothing but white with a few words, and it goes on. And I remember at the time it was an awesome story. It crossed over into the Superman books, the Batman books, Green Lantern, the Flash. It crossed over into almost everything at the time because everybody had some kind of a part to play in this. And yeah, and then after it concluded and things kind of returned to some kind of a normal, as whatever that was at the time, you kind of get like a history of the DCU, which was kind of cool because it kind of helped people to kind of get an idea of where things stood and where things were at the time. I mean, you see, it starts back to billions of years ago, the Guardians and the JSA's time, the Golden Age, got the Silver Age, and of course, the modern age today, etc. At least up to that point, which is the 90s. And then after the book, and then after the storyline ends and its timeline, this chronology sort of ends, you get, I guess, kind of like another little essay, or like a prologue, so to speak, or epilogue. And then this was probably the original one from 1994. So that's kind of cool. And which, I guess, reading this, it says that this was also printed in the original trade paperback, which, yes, here it is. That's it. So that's the original version, and then here is the updated printed version. So that's kind of cool. And then the back of this book basically features all the different covers and so forth. Even has the newest version of the cover right here, the old trade cover, and some of the spreads, promotional posters and whatnot. And the art is fantastic in this storyline. The storyline itself was fantastic, and of course the consequences kind of reverberated for a while there. And you have Monarch here, and some script stuff, which is kind of cool, and different logo ideas that they were toying around with. It's nice. Some sketches there, kind of cool. Erasing time. So yeah, this was an awesome story at the time, and if you're a DC Comics fan, I would highly recommend you pick this up. If you love the art of Dan Jurgens, and of course, especially the art of Jerry Ordway, if you love either one of them, definitely pick this book up. It is definitely worth your time and money. It is big improvement over this. It's not a whole lot of extra content, but there are some extra content. There is some extra content in there, especially the fact that it's hardcover with a dust jacket. This is just soft cover, and the pages are kind of like old newspaper style print, whereas this actually has the modern print that they use for comics. So I would definitely go and pick this up. You can probably find this on Amazon. It will set you back about $25 in the United States and about $33.99, $34 or whatever in Canadian money. And whereas the original trade cost $17.99 and $23.99 respectively. So yeah, this is definitely worth picking up. It's makes a nice addition to any DC Comics fans collection, and especially if you want to have all of the major crossover events and crises, this definitely qualifies, because I think the chronology goes from Crisis on Infinite Earths, followed by Invasion, then I believe it was 0 Hour, Final Night, Infinite Crisis, or actually Day of Judgment, Infinite Crisis, Final Crisis, followed by Flashpoint, then the Convergence, and then I guess the DC Rebirth kind of thing. And then I guess now we're kind of moving into this whole Doomsday Clock thing, which hopefully will bring back some characters that were lost during the New 52, like the JSA, or the Legion of Superheroes, or Captain Marvel, among other things. So anyway, that hopefully is a good look for you of this new trade or hardcover. I would definitely pick it up, check it out. If you have any questions or anything, please drop me a line down there. I'll be happy to try to answer them for you. And like I said, it's a very good storyline. The art is fantastic, as you can see, and it's a big improvement over the original trade paperback. The quality itself, and the fact that it's hardcover, and some of the bonus stuff in the back, like the sketches, the cover gallery, and promotional material that's in there, to me makes it worth it. It's a nice upgrade. And so yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time,